Back to dancing. There we go. Hello, and welcome back. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. That might help. Hello, and welcome back, everybody, to the greatest show in the universe. And today we have another edition of our weekly podcast discussion. And today we have quite a bit planned for you. So let me go ahead and get out of this. And we are going to actually start this discussion off with podcasts. I mean, not podcasts. We're doing the podcast. Today we're going to start off with Planet Edit. Sorry, guys. Very stressful day. Been running around trying to get a lot of things done at the last minute. So my mind's kind of screwy at the moment. So go ahead and close this out. So, Planet Edit. Planet Edit should be released, I think, tomorrow, actually. It should be coming up very soon. And with Planet Edit, we're going to actually get a whole lot of new features for customizing your planet. So when you go to the build kind of interface here, you have buildings, skins, and then there's going to be a third option over here, which is going to actually be for your Planet Edit. I can't remember what this tab here was called. I think it might just be called Edit. So once you select this tab, you're going to get kind of like a table over here with a list of options. And if you see down here in the bottom of the screen, you have Acquium, Unicoins, and Gems. This is actually all going to be replaced by 3 new icons. And these 3 icons, the first one is going to be a picture of a shovel. And what this amount here is going to be for is the total amount of edits that you can actually make for your planet. So, for instance, let me just get out of this. Let's say you wanted to build one of these mounds here, so like this mountain or hill, and you wanted to place one right here. That would be 1 edit, so it would cost you 1 of this new currency, which is going to be a shovel. So let me go back here. So another thing, so not just mountains, but you're also going to be able to place different flora and fauna. So there's going to be like boulders, rocks, flowers, bushes, trees, stuff like that. And that's all going to cost these points that are made up of this icon. Oops. Of this shovel icon. So it's going to be right here. This middle one is a picture of a road. I'm not entirely sure what that one's for yet. And that's one of the kind of, I guess you could call it a bug or one of the lack of features that we actually have at the moment. We have to go back and correct this. When you actually hover over these things, right now the only one that kind of gives you even a small description would be the first one, the shovels. When you click on it, just like clicking on Acquium, this will bring you to the marketplace. But in this screen, this is shovels here. When you click on this, you'll get kind of like a pop-up here. They'll ask you whether or not you want to buy additional shovels, which will allow you to do additional edits to your planet. And this will cost gems. But it doesn't actually tell you what each individual shovel does. It doesn't tell you, like, you don't get a description for this currency. And likewise, in this middle icon here, it's going to be replaced by a road, and there has like 2 arrows. What I think that's supposed to be for is for the distance for which you can place. If we can scroll. Okay, I got my planet kind of like upside down at the moment. Let's try to scroll it back like this. It's for your spawn point here, so the landing zone, for when you do planet invasions. So this is where you normally spawn when you do invasions, but because we're going to be releasing team invasions, it's going to be 3 people rather than just 1. And I think the idea is to allow you to move this landing zone so that you can assault the base from any of these 3 angles. So I think that's the plan, but right now, and I actually tested this earlier, while you can move this landing zone here, so you can move it, you can't move it anywhere on the planet, but I know you can move it up and down this road here, so anywhere within this space, and I did try putting it over here, and it worked here as well. I don't think I could get it to work over here, so to the east side of this gate, or to the north. But I did get it to work over here. So I think the idea is for you to allow to choose in which direction you want to be able to actually assault your base here. The problem is currently on the left side you have this you have your mining core surrounded by your mines, and on the opposite side you have your undo surrounded by the elemental altars. You actually cannot move any of these buildings right now. I actually tested this earlier. I tried moving them. When you actually click on it, you'll get a green spot. This indicates where you're allowed to move it. And if you try to move these buildings anywhere else, you'll see that it's red. And as soon as you click off of it, it'll just move right back to the initial position where you had it before. So while you can move the spot in which you can allow players to spawn, which again, I think the idea is to allow you to choose from what angle you will be able to attack your base from. It right now isn't of any benefit to move it anywhere because of the fact that you can't actually move these things out of the way yet. However, to get back to what I was talking about before with these different currencies that are going to be... I keep clicking the wrong table there. So, to get back to this, the middle one here is a road with 2 arrow signs. I think the idea is that it's going to allow you to increase the maximum distance between where you can actually place your landing zone from your gate, so from your actual base. I think that's what the intended purpose is for, but without an actual description, I couldn't actually figure out what the entire purpose was it for. So that's just my guess right now. So right now, this would be the equivalent of, if we were to count all these different cells, it's probably roughly around, I'd say 8 to 10 cells away. So as this increases, it'll allow you to place it further and further back. So you could potentially place more obstacles in the way, so people might have to navigate, kind of like a labyrinth or maze. So rather than having this direct path, maybe they might have to zigzag like this, and that will allow you to place extra defenses. So it takes players longer to actually get to your base and give you time for your goblins that spawn. Well, they're not goblins. They're more like, we go into here, your little enemies here. Will actually give them time to spawn to catch up to your the people trying to assault your base and kind of slow their progress and prevent them to actually getting to your base. And then the third option over here was for walls. So over here, as you can see, you have walls that line your base. You will actually be able to expand this, and every time you place down a wall, it expands it by 1 cell. So for instance, if you look here and you have this mountain, that's 1 cell. So when you place down walls, it'll cover the equivalent spot of just one of these mountains. So if we see here, because we have this large amount of distance, this is probably roughly the equivalent, if I had to guess, something like 20, maybe 30 cells, if we were to actually count each individual spot. So when you increase this third option here, this will actually increase the amount of different cells that you can place walls around. Now, the problem that I found with placing walls is you can't like click on a side and expand it. So how this actually works, like let's say you wanted to make a space here. You would actually have to place another wall right in this cell, and it'll move this wall here up here. So you can't actually individually move each individual wall. You actually have to place more wall cells. So that's how that works. So you have a maximum limit of that as well. I'm not entirely sure how these two here increase, because again, there's no description currently available. I think how it's supposed to work is as you increase your town hall, you increase your maximum capacity of these two kind of currencies. But this one here, there is actually a description for it, and it says that as you complete more arenas and do more planet invasions, you can increase the amount of edits you have. But you could also buy more edits with gems as well. So I think the current exchange rate is like 300 gems for 10 additional edits, if I'm not mistaken. It's something like that. But considering that you're supposed to be rewarded these through planet invasions and arenas, it's probably a better option to just grind for additional edits rather than spend gems on. But at least with this currency, it's something that you could potentially increase through your in-game progress. As far as these two things go, I'm not entirely sure how they increase. I think it's through upgrading your town hall. And I'm actually seeing a lot of talk on the Twitch. Let's see if there's some clarification here. I should launch the test build. The problem with that is I would have to change my camera loadout. So let's see. Okay. Oops. Distance between town hall, or the landing zone and town hall is limited. And the next ending, 52. Okay. So some of the things I mentioned are hopefully going to have fixed by the next update. So getting back to the table here, and this is actually something I considered before, was actually showing you the test build, so you guys can actually see all these different things. But I figure that this is going to be released probably sometime in the next few days anyway, so you're going to be able to rewatch this video for sort of a reference. But I'll give you kind of a short tutorial on what these different features or different options that you're going to have here in this table are going to be for. So the first one's for terrain, and it's going to allow you to build these different mountains and moles. Mountains and hills, actually. And what you're going to be able to do is when you click on it, it'll build a one-cell mountain or hill. And if you keep left-clicking on it, it'll actually increase the elevation. And I think it has like 3 tiers. So this would seem to be like the lowest tier. And then you can see this one here is kind of higher than this one. So this might be the 2nd tier. And then this one over here might be the 3rd tier. I'm not sure if it's 2 tiers or 3 tiers. But you can actually increase the elevation. And if you right-click, you can decrease it or delete it entirely. And let's say there's no mountain here altogether. If you right-click, you can actually make like a ditch. It actually digs a hole. And one of the potential, I guess you can say, features that you can have with digging a hole, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on this later, is maybe you might be able to make something like a pond or a swimming pool, or it might be something that you might be able to use for traps in the future. So you might have to dig a hole and then place a trap in this de-elevated platform. So because this is the normal ground, you might have to dig a hole in order to put a trap. And then the trap will take the appearance of the normal ground, so when somebody steps over it, it'll activate the trap. So that might be one of the potential uses for being able to dig holes. I'm not entirely sure what the intended purpose is as of right now, because we don't currently have traps in the game. But I'm just letting you guys some of the things that I discovered kind of messing around with Planet Edit. But again, you're able to actually change the elevation of these different mountains and hills. So as you can see, again, you have like this lowest elevation, and then you could potentially make it larger. So a feature that you might be able to do with this is with these different elevations, at this lowest elevation here, you might be able to put different turrets. So we might release maybe, because we have, we scroll back over here, we have mortars, fire towers, ice towers, and I believe that's it so far. What you might be able to do is have like a different type of mortar, or maybe you have like an arrow tower or something like that, or some kind of rapid fire turret, and you might be able to put that on a mountain of low elevation. And how this might work is it might be, because it's on a higher elevation, it might be exempt from certain abilities. So let's say, just for instance, we play as a Kia. So I'll go ahead and go into free roam. And if I use my ability like this, you can see it creates a sort of glyph on the ground, and it seems to be damage placed on this particular spot. So in order to receive damage from that ability, you would actually have to walk over that area of effect. Now, when you have a platform of higher elevation, it might be exempt from that ground damage. So if you wanted to damage that particular turret that's on that higher elevation, you would either have to cast that spell on that higher elevated platform, which means because it's on this higher elevated platform, it's not affecting the enemies or any units that might be on the ground, or you might just not be able to cast it on that higher elevation altogether. So if we go back into free roam, it might be so that the only way to damage something of a higher elevation is to use your ultimate attack. So like this. So because this has a much larger area of effect, that's what you might have to do to damage some of these upper turrets that are on these higher elevations. So to balance that out, what you could potentially do is make these turrets that are on the higher elevations have lower HPs so that they can be destroyed more easily, but because they're on higher platforms, they're just harder to actually hit. So that might be a potential feature you can do with the different elevations of these platforms. So if we go back to build, so that was the first option. The second option is a different terrain option, which allows you to actually place, if we zoom in, this different flora and fauna. So as you can see here, we have kind of like a pine tree surrounded by rocks, and you have some flowers here. And then we'll take another example. We have here a few plants with some rocks. It kind of places randomized flora and fauna. So for instance, if you wanted to get a particular pattern, so a particular tree, maybe you want some bushes like this, you would have to place it down a few different times because each time it's randomized. So that just gives you an extra customization feature for your planet, allows you to decorate your planet more. But again, you're not always going to be able to get the kind of thing that you want. So you might not get the same rock formation if you wanted rocks. You might not get the same tree formation or plant formation. You might have to place it down a few times. So potentially what you could do in the future is add like a drop-down menu where you can scroll through and select the specific kind of model that you want to use so that you don't have to keep randomly placing them down and deleting them. So the next thing is after that, so you have hills, so mountains, and you can change the elevation. Then you have like flora and fauna. The next one is for different, what we call terrain paints. So if you guys are familiar with The Sims, one of the things you can actually do when you're building your property in The Sims is apply different terrain paints. So for instance, here we have like a road, but then here we have some grass. Over here we have a few dirt patches. If we go over here, we have some stone on the ground. So this is called terrain paints. So you can actually choose the different textures on the ground that's going to be placed underneath all the objects. So for instance, let's say you don't want this dirt road leading to your base here, and you want something a little bit more eloquent, a little bit more fancy. You would be able to choose this terrain paint here of this cobblestone, and you could place it down along this path, and you could potentially have like a cobblestone path go from your spawn point, the landing zone, to your actual base. So I think there's currently something like, I know there's more than 10, but there's like grass like this, there's dirt, there's like sand, there's like patches like this, then there's some with rocks. So there's all these different terrain paints. And you can not only apply it to just the ground, you could also apply it to the different elevations as well, so the hills and mountains. So as you can see, some of these have dirt on the top, some of them have grass. So some of them do have, like, you can't place all of them on the ground, and you can't place all of them on the mountains. Some of them can only be placed on certain elevations, but there are some terrain paints that can be pretty much placed anywhere you want. So that's the next option. So mountains, flora and fauna, then terrain paints. The fourth one is roads, if I'm not mistaken. So here we have roads, and if you want this direct path just like this, what you would be able to do is like place it down, and also if you have kind of like an elbow here, and you were to place down a road right here, for instance, you actually get this kind of formation like this. So you get a little triangle formation. So you can build potentially roads, or if you want to create kind of like outlines like this to go around certain buildings and structures. So maybe in the future, let me try to zoom out here a little bit. Maybe in the future, when you will be potentially allowed to move the mines and magic core and maybe the undo and elemental altars, maybe you might want to move them over here or something. You would be able to do an outline like this and kind of close in the enclosure to where you want these different things to go. So that is kind of the idea with roads. So you could kind of make more intricate designs for where like you would normally walk if you were to like traverse your own planet. So kind of like a natural lines of travel. So after that, what was the next one? Let me see here. Gates. So I already talked about gates, or not gates, walls. So I'll get to gates in a minute, actually. So the next one is walls, and I already briefly talked about that. It places them down in a cell. So they take this kind of hexagon formation like this, and in order to expand them to get more area, you have to place down more walls. You can't actually select individual walls and expand them. So it's not like The Sims where you can like place down like a room and then grab one wall and kind of extend it. You actually have to place down more cells. So, and again, there's like a maximum limit for all these things. The first couple of options, so there's actually, as far as I know, I don't think there's a limit on terrain paints. I'm not sure if that actually takes up shovels. I can't recall. But roads, flora and fauna, and mountains and hills do require shovels. I just can't recall whether or not terrain paints actually require shovels. But not gates, walls. Walls require a different resource. It's the third option over here, which is going to be for walls. So these all require different resources. Again, I'm not entirely sure what the middle resource is yet. We actually need to add descriptions for each of these things and explain what they actually do. So if that's not available for when Planet Edit actually comes out, which will be sometime in the next few days, hopefully we can have that ready by the next update. So probably sometime by next week or before next weekend, and then hopefully that will clear up a lot of confusion. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was gates. With this update, you're actually going to be able to increase the maximum level of your gates to level 6. So just like how the majority of the rest of these buildings and structures can be upgraded to a maximum level of 6, you will also be able to upgrade your gates to a maximum level of 6. And by doing so, if we can zoom in here, if you guys have noticed, when you actually upgrade different buildings, the actual model will update. So things will become they'll grow larger and they'll become more intricate. So as you can see here, my level 6 house has like this skull on the top. It has these like braziers, these like torch holders on the side, and it has like this cool little Viking spike thing in the front. So as you can see, as you level up your buildings, they become cooler, they become larger. And likewise, when you upgrade the gate, you can see the towers here on the side, they begin to upgrade as well. So right now you can see that they're actually wooden, and they have this little flare at the top that kind of shoots at oncoming enemies that are attacking the gate. So this actually will begin to turn to stone. So I think upgrade 4 turns it to stone, and then the stone gets larger. So these actually look almost like castle towers by the time you max them out at level 6. So it's really cool. It's a really nice addition. The only issue that I kind of have is it doesn't mesh well with the actual walls. So right now the walls are wooden, and they mesh well with the gates because the gates are also wooden. Now that you can upgrade the gates, they become stone, and they become larger, so they look like castle towers. So potentially what we could do in the future is give you the ability, when you go to build, to upgrade your walls. So then your walls can go from like wooden to maybe reinforced wooden. So as you can see here, you have like these metal rebar and kind of like studs on the side here. So maybe you could have that on the sides and these little spikes on the top maybe across here. And then as you get to level 4, at the same time that the towers would upgrade to stone, maybe you could have like cobblestone walls. So that might be something we could potentially do in the future. But right now, only the gates can be upgraded. And again, they become stone. So they kind of match the textures of the town hall just a little bit. So as you can see here, like the stone in the bottom here, it's kind of like the same material that the walls are going to be made out of. Well, the gates. So next would be to try to upgrade the walls. So that's coming with Planet Edit as well. That should be released sometime in the next few days. So what else do I have? Oh, I wanted to talk about when you actually select and drop different things when you're in the Planet Edit menu. So when you go to Planet Edit and you have these list of things that you can actually do. So for instance, mountains. You left click to place down a mountain, and additional left clicks will increase the elevation, and you right click to decrease the elevation, and you can even dig holes. When you place a road, right click will place the road, or left click will place the road, and right click will get rid of the road. And same thing with the flora and fauna. When you left click, you'll place it, and right click gets rid of it. The problem is with the terrain paints, when you left click, you place it, but when you right click it, it doesn't do anything. What you actually have to do in that menu is over here, you're going to have a list of options. So you're going to have like an undo button in case you want to undo your last action. There'll be a green arrow in case you want to accept the changes that you've made to your planet. And there'll be a red X if you want to get out of the planet editor and not save your changes. What you actually have to do if you place down a terrain paint and you don't like it, you don't like its position and you want to change it, you actually have to hit the redo button. When you right click it, it doesn't actually get rid of it. So this is something that we probably have to fix in the future. So when you right click it, you can actually get rid of the terrain paint instead of having to hit the redo button over here. And when you place down walls, I've noticed that there's a little bit of an issue with getting rid of them as well. So again, you place it down with left click, but when you press right click on it, it'll actually just add more walls. You have to find, when you place it down, again, it'll be a cell, so it'll have 6 sides. You actually have to scroll around, and one of the sides will actually be clickable to get rid of it. It's kind of confusing, but I found that I think it's the south wall that actually gets rid of it through right clicking. Otherwise, when you right click, you actually just will add more walls. So again, the easier way of doing it is just hitting the redo sign over here, this button over here, to actually undo your last action rather than trying to right click the walls. Because by right clicking the walls, you're probably just going to place down more walls and just get frustrated. So that's something we have to kind of fix as well. So if we say, for instance, maybe the walls have sort of like a hitbox around it, we have to kind of fix the hitbox so it registers when you're right clicking it instead of left clicking it, so you're not placing down more walls and instead you're trying to delete the structure. So that was a kind of a small annoyance that I found with placing walls. What else? So I talked about gates. Something I want to do in the future. This isn't going to be available for the Planet Edit release, which will be sometime in the next few days. This is something we want to do later on down the road, is eventually increase the maximum level for all these buildings to level 10. So right now the maximum level for the majority of buildings is 6. There are a few exceptions. So for instance, Portal only goes to 4. Arena Portal only goes to 3. Mortars only go to 4. Fire Towers only go to 5. And Ice Towers only go to 3. I'm not sure if these defensive buildings also are going to get an increase with Planet Edit. I actually didn't experiment much with these. I do know the gates are actually going to get an increase. But the idea is eventually to increase the levels of all these different buildings and structures to 10. So that's going to allow you to increase your maximum Aquium storage. So right now at level 6 is currently at 400,000. So at level 10 it could be potentially be like 1 million or like 2 million, something like that. So that way you're not constantly filling up your Aquium storage and then have nothing to spend your gems on. So for instance, I'm at the stage of the game where I've literally upgraded all buildings except this one. So if we go to quests here, you can see upgrade Fire Tower to level 5, which is currently the maximum level for Fire Tower, and I have 3 out of 4. So this Fire Tower right here is literally the very last building I have left to upgrade. Once this is done, I've basically upgraded all buildings. So if my Aquium storage was currently full right now, I would have nothing to spend the Aquium on. So by giving you additional levels, by increasing the maximum level from 6 to 10, it will give you more things to spend your Aquium on until we can find other ways of having players invest Aquium in other areas. So one of the areas I talked about in my previous podcast was actually guilds, giving you the ability to actually invest Aquium in your guild. But I don't know how soon we would be able to actually implement that feature. So in the meantime, like I said, one of the things we could do is actually increase the maximum level for these different buildings. And also, not just increase the maximum level for the buildings, but I kind of want to add a few additional buildings as well. So, you know, I think everybody has some level of OCD. So when you see something like this, and you see like a magic core, and it's surrounded by mines, and you have this one position open, you have this strong feeling of, I just wish I had one more mine to put here to complete this set. And when you go over here to undo, you see how there's 4 elemental altars around the Undo, but there's one more position, and it's just not filled. So as a player, you see this and you're like, oh, I just wish there was just one more building just to fill that slot to complete this set. So one of the things I kind of want to do in the future is add 1 additional mine to bring in the maximum mines from 4 up to 5 so that this is completely filled. Add 1 additional elemental altar, bringing the total amount of elemental altars from 4 up to 5 so that this area is completely full. Another thing I want to do is add 1 additional ship. So as you can see here, we have 4 houses. I want to add 1 ship here, so we have 4 ships. So you'll have the same amount of ships as for houses, so they'll equal out. And I also want to add 1 more gate. So as you can see, we currently have 3 gates. So you have south, west, and east. I want to actually add a north gate. So right now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but you can actually move the gates right now. And you see as when you move the gates, it actually kind of moves the walls a little bit as well. But this is where I want the position for the final gate. So the 4th gate will be the north gate, and it'll be positioned right here. So I'll go ahead and move that back. So as you guys can see, the magical number is 4. So there's 4 fire towers, 4 houses, 4 mines currently, 4 elemental altars currently, but only 3 ships. I want to increase the 3 ships up to 4 to reach that magic number. We have 3 gates. I want to increase that to 4 to reach that magic number as well. And for the mines and elemental altars, I actually wanted to increase that to 5 because of the fact that you have this free available slot that, you know, currently there's nothing that can go into. Now, there's something I actually wanted to talk about with the elemental altars. This was something we discussed privately behind the scenes probably about a month ago. So the idea is currently I think they want to add an air elemental altar. So this final altar is going to be the element of air. So you're going to have fire, water, air, earth, and then non-elemental. This is actually not an elemental building. It's just barracks. So this is like a fighting type if we want to use like a Pokemon example. So kind of the idea that I had is because of the fact the rest of these are all going to be elemental altars, you're going to have fire, water, air, and earth. Why not make this barracks, why not make this the air altar and make this final altar over here the electric altar? Now all 5 will be elemental altars. We discussed this privately before. The other developers kind of didn't like this idea. But when we actually go into the different characters, so actually, let's go into free roam. When we go into free roam, if I can actually, okay, so here's the altars. You'll find that currently the military altar is occupied by 2 characters, Forga and Morth. So let me actually transition to Morth. So if we go to spells with Morth, what's his spinning attack called? Blade Dance. Okay, so this is called Blade Dance. So let's go ahead and go into free roam. Oh, he's still dancing. When we perform the attack Blade Dance and he spins around like this, to me, we can change Blade Dance to like Whirlwind Blade. So as Whirlwind Blade, it actually even has the word wind in it. So as he's performing that animation, as you can see, it actually seems to be like an air elemental attack. So you can have kind of like a gust of wind, perhaps, or maybe a few leaves to indicate that he's making a gust of wind while he's spinning around. So that's Morth, and with Forga, if we go to Forga, he has a number of abilities, so Volley of Arrows, Chains, let's see, Detonation, Mass Arrows. So we'll go ahead and play him. So this is the ability I have here. So as you can see, he shoots arrows up in the air and they come down and they're kind of green tipped, indicating that they're poisoned. So as he's performing that animation, you could kind of have like wind lines indicating that there's like a gust of air coming up as they're coming down to show that there's more force behind it. So like if you guys watch a cartoon and let's say somebody's running really fast and you see a gust of wind come behind him. So my kind of idea is as he's shooting the arrows up in the air, you see this little trail of wind, this gust. So it gives you this impression that as the arrows are coming down, they're coming down with force. So again, this would be air elemental. So we go back into our kind of zoomed out mode here. So that's my idea. Now, it doesn't mean we necessarily have to get rid of the barracks buildings. My idea is actually to repurpose the barracks for something else, which I'll discuss in a different podcast, because we're just not going to have enough time. We're already 30 minutes into this one. But when I get to the discussion of RTS, so real-time strategy elements that I want to potentially investigate into, possibly adding to the game in the future, I think the barracks could be repurposed for something that we can use for real-time strategy mini games or entire arena modes. So it doesn't mean we necessarily have to get rid of this model that already physically exists in the game. All we have to do is put it on the back burner, and we can use it for something else later on down the road. But that's my idea. So my idea is turn the barracks into the air altar, and then where the air altar would go, we would make that the electric altar. So right now we have this character Neri. So let's pick Neri, and let's get out of spells. And if we go into free roam, you can see he's actually part of the fire altar. So right now, fire and electric are actually in the same altar. But later on, we're going to be releasing this character called Cassis, who also has electric type abilities. So my idea is just to move Neri, since Cassis is going to be coming out in the future anyway, who also has electrical abilities, he would probably be placed in the fire altar. My idea is just to place Neri and Cassis in the electric altar. So we would have an electric altar over here. So that would free up some room for the fire altar, so we can add additional fire characters later on down the road. So that's just my idea. I want to get your guys' feedback on it. I already discussed this with some of the other developers privately, probably about a month ago. And again, they didn't really like this suggestion, but maybe if I could get some of you guys to back me on this, maybe they might reconsider. So right now the idea is just to have a wind altar, and then leave this one as like non-elemental. It's just called barracks. I would change the barracks into a wind altar, and then add this last one as an electric altar, so that each one of these is an elemental type. And then barracks would just be repurposed for something that we would use down the road. So the only thing that would happen with barracks is we're going to basically retexture it. We're replacing one model with another one, and the model that currently exists, this barracks is little Dojin kind of style building. If we actually zoom in here, it's actually reminiscent of Chinese architecture with the tiered structure like that. That could be repurposed for something that we could potentially use down the road. So that's just my idea. I want to get your guys' feedback on that. And like I said, maybe if enough players agree with my decision, maybe the other developers can reconsider. What else did we want to talk about? So, right. So I said before about being able to dig holes and how it could be potentially used for something like ponds. Maybe you can make a swimming pool, or for combat purposes, maybe it might be something that you could use for traps. And so traps, I already briefly explained that you could potentially in the future place traps in the road. So as you have this de-elevated area, you place a trap in it, and it'll have like an automatic covering. So you as the player, you know where your traps are on your planet, but the other players who are assaulting your planet aren't aware of it because it'll be invisible to them. So as they run over that area, it'll actually activate the trap. So I'll go back to the other two things that I talked about before. Potential of having ponds or swimming pools. So this goes into the idea of being able to have players actually visit other players' planets and have social mini games. So some of the things that I'd like to see in the future is have things like hide and seek and tag and small like social mini games that you can play directly on your planet. So this wouldn't need its own arena or anything. These are things that you can do right on your own planet. So one of the things that you can do with this edition with Planet Edit and being able to place all these different mountains and all these flora and fauna, so all these different trees and bushes and stuff, is you can help create these different game modes for like hide and seek and tag, where you could potentially hide in these different areas and players will have to maybe rummage through the bushes in order to catch you. So there might be like a time limit. So you might be able to have some kind of small interface here on the bottom that allows you to start a mini game, and players can kind of queue in, and you can play these different mini games on your own home world. So you would be able to play like tag, hide and seek, stuff like that. And again, they would be timed games because your planet isn't very large. So if the games didn't have a time limit and you were to do, let's say, hide and seek, eventually you would find everybody because the planet is so small. So maybe you have 30-second mini games that you could just play for fun. I'm not necessarily sure that you would have rewards for playing these mini games. So maybe what the host of the planet can do is make something like when you go to battles, and you can actually do a custom match, and you can change the resource and stuff for the people who win. Maybe what you can do is have a thing where you can have like a reward that you can change for Acquium or something. So players who participate in these mini games can be rewarded Acquium. So that's just an idea I had. So hide and seek and tag. Then I talked about how you can dig a ditch and you could potentially have pools and ponds. So maybe you can do swimming. So if you actually look in, if you go to Google Images and you put in Unnyworld, you can see kind of previous versions of some of the character models of the current characters in the game. So Morth, Isna, Akia, characters like this. And you'll find that some of them are kind of lacking in clothing. So for instance, with Morth, I think one of his early character models, all he is wearing is shorts. So what might be a fun thing that you could potentially do for social events is have this extra skin that you can get for your character where they can be in swim attire, and you could potentially swim around in these pools that you can build on your planet. And another thing you could do is maybe go fishing. Now, as you're going fishing, you would perform like an animation where you're casting the reel and you're reeling in the fish, but you're not actually catching fish. What you might actually do is have like a randomized thing where you catch certain amounts of Acquium that are randomized. So it might be anywhere between, let's say, 0 and 100. So you cast a reel in, you reel it in, maybe you get 15 Acquium. And you do it again, maybe you get 25. And you do it again, maybe you get 30. So it would be a random amount. The problem is this might encourage AFKing, where people might go fishing and then just farm for like a straight hour. Or they might leave their account on overnight, so they might abuse this to get Acquium faster this way. So there might be a limit on how much you could fish per day. And in fact, you could possibly even make it a daily task where it's like, fish 1,000 Acquium today. And it might take you 15 minutes to fish, but it'll give you a new thing to do for like a social event. So you might be able to do like a fishing contest where you can get a number of people on your planet, and you have a certain time limit of, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, and whoever can fish the most amount of Acquium in that time limit would win this small fishing contest. So these are just certain ideas that could potentially be implemented in the future, just based on some of the things that we're going to do with Planet Edit, and hopefully integrating some social events and activities along with Planet Edit in the future. So what else do I have for you? I wanted to talk about a community hub. So this is an idea that I kind of got off of playing other games. So I had mentioned The Sims before. So Sims, you have something called, is it like the Creation Club? I can't remember. But you can save projects that you worked on. So if you build a house or you customize a character, you can upload your creation to a community hub, which other players can go and view, and they can like your submissions, and they can even download their submissions and use it themselves. So my idea is potentially in the future to create something like that. And another game that uses this feature is like Spore, and it's the same thing. You can customize your planet. You can customize different creations, so different buildings, different characters. Then you can submit it to this community hub where other players can view it, they can like it and vote on it, and they can download it and use for themselves. What we could potentially do in the future is create a community hub for Unnyworld where you can take screenshots of your planet, upload it to the community hub, and it's sort of like advertising for your planet. Players can actually go to the community hub, see these screenshots of your planet, and like it. So you would have like this kind of like leaderboard for votes. So players would like certain planets, and then they would be able to actually join that planet. So let's say your planet is in the top 5 and it's getting a lot of votes. Players can click on that planet and hit like join planet or visit planet, and they would actually be able to spawn in the same place where you do planet invasions. Let me go ahead and scroll. So they would spawn in the landing zone. So they would land in the landing zone. But unlike a regular planet invasion where they would have to fight through all these waves of enemies and stuff, they would be able to passively walk through your entire planet, pass through your gates and everything, and really explore your planet. And what it will do is players who make the most interesting designs host the most events, so they do the most hide and seek, most tags, stuff like that, they're probably going to be the players who get the most votes. So potentially what's going to happen is those players that get the most votes, who are most active in the game, who have the most events, who make the most creative designs, are going to appear at the top of the page, and players are going to be able to visit their planets, and you're going to have all these different community events and things that the hosts of the planets can actually host themselves. So this will kind of encourage more player-to-player interaction while giving you more things to do in the game and more social involvement. So in the meantime, while we're kind of ironing out that idea, because this is like a really big feature to implement, it's going to take a lot of work. What we want players to do in the meanwhile is, after this podcast goes live and it gets published on YouTube, and I'm going to publish it again in the forums, is we want your players, once Planet Edit goes live and you start being able to customize your planet and everything, we want you to take screenshots of your planets. So maybe you make an interesting defense, maybe you make an interesting design for your town. We want to see improved levels of creativity. We want you to post screenshots of your plan on the forum so that players can vote on it now. And we're going to actually reward players who have the most creative planets. So that's something we want to implement now, but it's all going to be done through the forum until we can get this community hub idea kind of ironed out. Because again, it's going to be such a large feature, because it's going to have its own interface. You're going to have all these different planets that you're going to be able to scroll through and vote on. We're going to need some kind of way of organizing it, so players are going to have to. So it might have to be like an alphabetical list. So all submissions made by players with the first letter in their name, A, and then B, C. It might have to go through maybe different types. So maybe you want to submit an idea for a really cool defensive strategy. So there might be a defense tab. There might be one for social events. So there's a whole lot of organization that would have to be done before we actually publish this user interface. So like I said, this might be something that you won't see for a few months, maybe even longer. Who knows? So in the meanwhile, what we want you guys to do is actually take screenshots of your planet and post it in the forums. And likewise, other players are going to be able to view it and vote on it. And we're actually going to reward players who are going to be in the top positions. So that's what we're going to do in the meanwhile. What else do I have for you? So this is another idea that I brought up approximately about a month or two ago. We discussed this privately. And this is another really, really big one. It's going to take a lot of work before it gets implemented, but I'm just spitballing the idea here so you guys can, give me some feedback on this. The other idea I had is we'll actually go into free mode here. And if we go to Town Hall, I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but on a lot of these buildings, there's actually doorways, okay? So on your Town Hall, oops. Okay, stop it. You can actually see a doorway. Now, these doorways are pretty small. Maybe Neri can get through it. I'm sorry, Chico. I'm kind of in the middle of something. But as you can see here, the doorways are pretty small. So not all the characters can actually fit through the doorways. But that's just kind of like a graphical thing. But the idea here is you're going to have a way to actually enter your town hall. Yes, you will actually be able to enter your town hall, and you will enter a new cell. But it's going to be a very small cell. So the entirety of the cell might be only the size of, let's say, this area right here. So it's just going to be a one-room cell, but it's going to be a pretty large room. The idea here is you're going to be able to customize the inside of your town hall. And what you're going to be able to do is buy furniture. So like when you're in the overworld and you go to the build menu and you can select the different buildings that you can place on your planet, you're going to have this different user interface when you enter your town hall, where you can buy different furniture options. So there'll be chairs, there'll be tables, there'll be like bookcases, rugs, chandeliers, just stuff like that, desks, all these different kinds of things. And potentially what you could possibly do, I don't know if we'll necessarily be able to take something like let's say a chair, and maybe like how you would normally upgrade a building. So let's say, I talked about gates before. A gate starts off as wooden, and as you upgrade it, it becomes like a studded wooden, so it has all these spikes, then it becomes stone. Maybe what you could do is take like a regular basic wooden chair, then it becomes like a more fancy wooden chair, then maybe it becomes like a stone chair, maybe it becomes a crystal chair. So you might be able to upgrade the different furnitures, but if that might be a little bit too much work, what you can potentially just do is offer different furnitures at different prices. So rather than upgrading your wooden chair to a stone chair, you might just be different furniture options that you could just buy. So instead of starting off with a wood chair and upgrading it to a crystal chair, you could just buy the crystal chair. So I'm not entirely sure how this would work out yet. Again, this would be a massive feature that would take a lot of testing before it gets implemented. But the idea is you would have all these different furniture options, maybe like a fireplace too, and you would be able to decorate the inside of your town hall. And one of the big ideas that I had for decorating the inside of your town hall is buying a display case. Now, this is how the display case would work. When you go here and you go to achievements, you can see as you unlock achievements, you actually get badges and stuff. So for instance, let's go to profile and we'll go to achievement badges. So for instance, this one says grade 10, so you have to complete this achievement to unlock this badge. This one is Fire Runner. So we'll just use Fire Runner for example. So Fire Runner, I believe that's turtle season. Let's go up here. Fire Runner turtle season. So, I'm sorry Chico, kind of in the middle of something. So Fire Runner for turtle season. When you complete turtle season 250 times, you unlock the badge Fire Runner, which you can use as a customization option for your name tag. My idea is this. Not only do you get a badge, you also get a trophy. So every achievement that offers you a badge would also get a small display trophy. So once you complete that achievement, it will actually appear in your display case. So you would have these different trophy stands. So one of them might be like a horizontal one, and it'll be like a display case where there might be 3 or 4 trophies on that stand. Another one might be a tall vertical one, which might have different shelves, and it might have different trophies for each shelf. So you might have 1 or 2 trophies per shelf. It might have 3 shelves, so you could have like 6 trophies there. So there would be all these different display cases for you to showcase the trophies that you earn from completing achievements. Again, this is a very big feature to implement. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work to actually, publish that in the game. But these are just a few ideas I had from customizing your town hall. So when players join or visit your planet, not only will you be able to engage in different social events, you'd be able to enter your town hall and actually see how you customize the inside of your town hall. And they can view the different trophies that you earned from all the different achievements that you completed. So they can see this, elaborate trophy case with all these different trophies, and they'll be able to see all the different things that you actually completed in the game. So that's number 1. Number 2, when you actually go to achievements, you see that there's all these different tiers. So for instance, we'll go to Fire Runner again. There's 5 stars. Now you get the achievement, so the badge, I think star 3. So this is how this would work. At star 3, you unlock the badge and you unlock the trophy. But the trophy is going to be brown for bronze. Once you get to 4 stars, that trophy will now go from bronze, so it'll be brown in color. So it's kind of like a copperish color. It'll go to silver. And then when you get to the 5 stars, so you completely completed this achievement and you've completely maxed it out, like some of these down here, once you have all 5 stars, that trophy will be gold. So not only will you unlock trophies, the trophies will actually change in color corresponding to your progress on your achievement. The first one will be bronze at 3 stars. The next one will be silver at 4, and then the final one will be gold at 5. So you get both the badge and the trophy at 3 stars, and it will continue to upgrade as you complete further achievements. So that was another idea that I had. So what else do I have for you? I think that was everything regarding buildings. Let me just double check. So yeah, I think that's good for buildings. Let me think. If there's anything else that I want to add to buildings, I'll actually add it in the forum post when this goes live, and I post it in the forums. But that should cover it for buildings for now. The last thing I wanted to talk about, a few players had asked me to briefly touch upon new arena modes. So we're actually working on a Battle Royale mode, which should be released hopefully by the end of the month. We currently have kind of a splash art in concept right now. So when you guys will enter different arenas, so for instance, we'll go to custom match. So like say Bang Bang Party, you see the splash art here? And then Rocket Depot and Turtle Season, every time you enter one of these games, you get this like screenshot image in the background before you actually enter the game. We're currently working on the one for Battle Royale. So we're going to be adding 2 more arena modes sometime in the near future. One of them's random. So it's going to be another tab over here. It's going to allow you to pick any one of these randomly, unless it's already implemented. Let me see. Custom match? No, I don't think it's already implemented. So one's going to be random, so randomly select any one of the available arena options, and then the next one's going to be Battle Royale. So the way Battle Royale is going to work is it's going to be a new arena type where players are going to spawn in and you're going to be able to fight each other, and as far as I'm aware, there's no teams. So I think each round is either going to be timed, so they might be 1-minute rounds, or they might go from maybe like the amount of kills you get. So maybe like first to 3 kills or something like that. But Battle Royale is currently in the works. I'm not sure if all the details have been ironed out about that yet, but that should be something you can expect to see maybe by the end of this month or early next month, something like that. But I know it's currently in the works right now. So we're going to have a random mode and Battle Royale. Some game modes that we could potentially do in the future is King of the Hill. So the idea with King of the Hill is it's going to be sort of like Bang Bang Party, where you're able to capture checkpoints, but in Bang Bang, when you capture the checkpoint, you summon goblins that will go and destroy the enemy's base and turrets and stuff. In King of the Hill, there'll either be one really big checkpoint in the middle, or there might be different checkpoints. So there might be 3 or 4 checkpoints. I'm not sure entirely how this would work. But just like Bang Bang Party and Rocket Depot, once you occupy the checkpoint, you'll kind of have like this circular image on the bottom. So kind of like Rocket Depot. And it'll start to tick like a clock. So as you stand on that position, it'll tick. And as you occupy that position, and I think the way it'll work, it'll be timed rounds. So whoever occupies the position for the longest amount of time, or whoever occupies that position when the time limit for that round runs out, will be the winner for that round. So it'll be King of the Hill. It'll be mostly focused on capturing checkpoints. And another one, just like Battle Royale, is supposed to be basically anything goes, all players against one another. So another one would be Team Deathmatch. So it'd be 3-on-3. The only objective in this... Chico, I'm sorry. You keep interrupting me here. The only objective in Team Deathmatch is literally kill the enemy team. And so there's nothing else. There's no checkpoints to actually capture. It's just going to be a fight to the death. So Battle Royale, Team Deathmatch, and King of the Hill. Now, some of the things I actually wanted to talk about with implementing these new arenas is possibly new power-ups. So right now, there's a couple of power-ups. There's one that increases your defense. There's one that increases your speed. There's one that slowly reheals your HP. And there's one that increases your damage. I'm thinking about a 5th one that automatically fills all of your cooldown timers. So when you use a spell, let's go ahead and just pick a random character. In fact, I got Neri right here. So we'll go ahead and use a spell. You can see here I had 30 seconds on the clock for this to cool down. So my idea is to have a new power-up that when you run over it, all the cooldowns that you currently have will go to 0, so you can immediately use your spells again. But this cooldown this power-up, because of the fact that it's going to reduce all your cooldown timers to 0, so when you collect it, you can use all your spells immediately. I don't want this to be too overpowered, so it's subject to abuse. So the respawn timer on this power-up might be slower than some of the other power-ups. So, for instance, the increased damage, increased defense, speed, and HP, this one might respawn at maybe half the speed that those power-ups respawn at. Another one I was thinking about possibly implementing is an Uber power-up, which gives you the effects of all 5 at the same time, but, again, the duration for the effect will be much smaller. So when you collect the Uber power up, the duration might only be like, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds. It'll be a very small window, but you'll have increased damage, increased defense, increased speed. You'll start to slowly regain health, and it'll reset all of your timers to 0. But the respawn timer on this will be very, very slow. It might be like 1 minute. So if your game lasts only 2 or 3 minutes, this will only respawn maybe 2 or 3 times in the entire match. So there'll be an Uber power-up. So those are potentially 2 new power-ups that we can actually implement. And I think that'll do it for new arena modes. So like I said, we're going to have random, battle royale, hopefully team deathmatch, and King of the Hill. And potentially we'll add more arena modes as well in the future. For instance, we're going to have a boss mode, and we're going to be adding dungeons in the future. But that's for a topic and discussion for another time. And hopefully we can add a few more power-ups to just increase the game dynamic when you're actually playing in the arena, to kind of switch things up and add a little bit more strategy. So maybe your team is behind. Maybe you're playing Turtle Season and the score is 2-0 and your team hasn't even scored yet. And you collect this Uber power-up, that can completely turn things around and help you guys put you back on the map so you can actually play catch-up and potentially even turn the tables and even win that minigame or arena despite the fact of being so far behind. So that's kind of some of the ideas I have with some of these additional power-ups. And I think that'll do it for today's podcast. I think we ran a full hour. I just want to make a few announcements before we close this out. So we're actually still looking for somebody to help us out with the South America player versus developer streams. So every Saturday we have player versus developer for North America and Europe. We're looking for people that can potentially help us out for South America. One of our community managers, Lucas, has been trying to do this, but he's been running into a lot of technical difficulties. So if you guys want to help out with the South American stream, please contact Lucas on the forum, and we'll see if we can work out something where if you help stream for us, maybe we can reimburse you with gems for for helping contribute to the game. So my throat is starting to get sore. I'm sorry, guys. So so we're looking for people to help with the South American podcast. And if you're interested in doing this, please contact Lucas on the forums, and we'll probably discuss this over Discord or something, and we'll work out the details from there. And again, you might be paid in gems for your contributions and helping out our team. The next thing I wanted to talk about was we might be rescheduling a future podcast. So our weekly discussion podcasts are always held on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. EDT. We might actually be changing this. I don't have any details for you right now, but hopefully I'll have some details for you by next week's podcast. And we might actually start having guests on, so you won't just be watching me talk to myself for an hour. There'll actually be some dialogue rather than a monologue. So we're going to start trying to get guests on, and we want to encourage players. If you're interested in joining the podcast, please let me know on the forums. I check the forums daily, so every single day. So if you post in the forums letting me know that you want to attend the podcast, I will basically know immediately, and we'll be able to work out the details. And yeah, so I already submitted a thread on the forum where you can kind of submit an application of sorts. There are a few guidelines. So, we try to keep this show family friendly. So we don't want any swearing. We don't want you to dress inappropriately. So no clothing that's going to have profanity on it or anything like that. So, just common sense stuff. But let us know if you want to actually participate in the podcast. And that way, you can actually contribute to the direction and the future of the game. So I'll let you guys pick the topics, and we'll come on and talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. So that's something we want to do in the future. And one other announcement that I'm going to make today, this is something I'm going to leave a little bit vague because I'm going to surprise you guys on this. I've been working on something for the last couple of days, and hopefully it'll be prepared for you guys by next week's podcast. But it's just something I've been doing in my free time. It's going to be something a little interesting. I'm just going to leave it at that. Again, I want to keep it intentionally vague because I want it to be a little bit of a surprise. But hopefully I'll have that ready for you guys by next week. So look forward to this, podcast exclusive first look at this thing that I've been working on lately. And I think that'll do it for today's podcast. So I want to thank everybody for attending. And if you enjoy the game and you want to help support us financially, make sure to check out our Steam store, where we're currently selling the Founders Pack, where you can unlock characters like Neri, as I have right here. And if you guys are feeling extra generous, please consider checking out our Patreon and donating to our Patreon. Every dollar helps, and with the money invested, it's going to producing original content, so we can release features of the game more quickly. So I saw that last week when we released the Guild podcast, we've got a lot of feedback on it. I think right now in our forum, it's currently like the thread that's getting the most responses. So I know you guys are absolutely thrilled about seeing additional features added to guilds. I hope we get the same responses for today's podcast. But if you guys want to see these things being implemented faster, go ahead and check out our Patreon and help donate. It will significantly help the developers reinvest in the game, and so we can produce these features much quicker. So again, that will do it for today. I want to thank everybody for attending, and I'll see you guys all next week. And I want to remind everybody to have a very beautiful day.